Salutations all, Juiciest Slice here to have a mature conversation about the perils of growing up too fast, the rites of passage that go hand in hand with girlhood giving way to womanhood, and the absolute weirdness of where burgeoning can take a young woman on the cusp of adulthood, especially when she's a fetching femme fatale on a mission to make the perfect life by any means necessary, including killing her mother and seducing, well, I'll get to that soon enough.
Boy, that's a sticky one. I don't even know how to judge that.
I'm of course talking about the film Wicked. Anyone taking the time to check this out, I deeply appreciate it. So what do you get when you take a teenage girl intent on getting her way at all costs? Even breaking sickening taboos? In more recent years you get excision and that whole Pandora's box. But if you look back to when Y2K was looming, the President of the United States was embroiled in, oh no, a sex scandal. Boy, was that a shared cultural moment. And I was a scrappy teen just trying to get through the day.
What is this, the 90s? Come on.
Indeed it is. You get the twisted little thriller, Wicked. I must like to go to uncomfortable places.
Did you just figure that out?
Because this flick is uber uncomfortable. But I feel it's a weird expedition worth taking.
I apologize for nothing.
If anything about this trips your fancy, please like, subscribe, and share. I'd appreciate that too.
Yes.
One of 2 director credits in the career of Michael Steinberg, Wicked was produced by Frank Better and written by Eric Weiss. The film stars the enchanting Julia Stiles as Ellie Christensen, our hellbent bad girl, the legendary Michael Parks as Detective Boland, who proves useless authority appears not only in low-budget slashers. In a really thankless role, William R. Moses as Ben Christensen, Ellie's lacking paternal figure, the accomplished Chelsea Field
Say goodbye to Ellie, Lena. She's going to LA.
as Karen Christensen, Ellie's mom. Since the character henpecks and carries on, Karen is an apt name for her. Sorry, normal Karens just looking to live your lives only to have your name hijacked as a descriptor for overly entitled, typically middle-aged, complaining busybodies perpetually seeking a manager. The lovely Vanessa Zima
Ellie's inside the truck.
Oh, hi, Ellie.
as Inger Christensen, Ellie's caught-in-the-crossfire little sister. Sadly, her only acting credit, I feel she could have done more, Louise Meerbach as Lena Anderson, the housekeeper and Ellie's competition, and the versatile Patrick Muldoon.
Gonna miss me, Pookie.
Hey, didn't I see that guy get his brains sucked out? That's it, as the no less ill-fated Lawson Smith, although his brains will stay in his head in this one. We first meet privileged but fed-up Ellie as she hastily packs a suitcase that will bear a lot of relevance. And commences to quote-unquote run away. Her supposed intent?
I'm gonna go to LA, and I'm gonna find people who love me. And those people will find me a job that will make me a lot of money.
Revealing in some ways a typical teenager with unrealistic, fanciful delusions of grandeur. She was a real forerunner of the
Whatever, I do what I want.
mentality. She doesn't really want a skidoo. She desires validation that isn't forthcoming.
Who's trying to stop you? I'm just here to wish you a safe journey and a good time on your travels.
Inger is the only one other than Ellie emotionally invested in what seems like a common occurrence.
Please, Ellie, don't go.
While arriving, Lena also pays her no mind.
Oh, wow. Bye, Ellie. Oh, I get the phone.
Karen's parting words are a stake through her daughter's heart.
Have a pleasant trip.
And Ellie is left standing alone in the cul-de-sac, looking very small.
I'm leaving!
Ellie, of course, decides not to run off. On the way to the bus stop, she explains to Inger what prevents her.
I always mean to run away. But then as soon as I walk out that door, I think of Dad. And can you imagine what he would do if I left?
Ellie's family might live in a prosperous gated community, but that doesn't mean she's not subject to bullying.
Hey, Sasquatch.
Leave her alone.
An unflattering nickname only accomplishes ticking her off.
Oh, shit.
Shrewd, calculated, maybe even a little diabolical, Ellie is a master manipulator too, her proficiency allowing her to eschew trouble by playing her workaholic dad against her stay-at-home mom.
I say that there's a problem, that she is acting up again. I expect you to believe me.
Ellie has figured out the right chords to pluck with Ben.
You know, Mom, we love you too.
Smartly positioning to appear as the reasonable one.
And what about this attempted murder charge at the bus stop?
Not guilty.
And manages to emerge victoriously, augmenting the alienation that exists between her and Karen as well as her parents.
It's funnier every time.
Next morning, there's turmoil at the neighbors. Ellie and Inger get elucidated to the fact a breakup has occurred.
You guys are moving?
Yeah, today Mom and I are leaving because Dad can't pay his bills.
Ellie gets unceremoniously shooed by Lawson.
Want to get out of my truck? Come on, get out of here, get out of here.
The sisters gawk at his family's departure, not knowing they could be witnessing a preview of their future.
Enjoy the show?
Some POV stalking shots reveal Lawson and Karen in his house canoodling in the wake of his family's exodus. Lawson is not happy to learn Karen is leaving Ben and taking the girls, but it doesn't include him.
What are you talking about? We had plans.
I know, it's difficult.
No.
In the moment, Karen is no less hot to trot, and things go down as someone plays voyeur. Cheating on her husband, a sure sign Karen is checked out of her marriage. We will learn she is aware Ben is cheating with someone close at hand too, so feels entitled to her duplicity. I have a feeling the problems go much deeper than mutual infidelity.
Is that not clear?
Not so unreceptive when it's Dad. Ellie's day is made by Ben's arrival home, perhaps in an attempt to assuage guilt for all his time away, or other things. It helps he comes bearing gifts. Inger is a little perplexed to get a stuffed pig. And Ellie is elated to get a starter makeup kit that will prove divisive.
And what did you get me?
It's a makeup kit.
I suspect I know what her love language is. Preparing to cut and run, earlier that day Karen kicked Lena to the curb, informing her that her services won't be required any longer, with enough restrained bite to know there's more to it, and proceeds to lie to Ben, saying the housekeeper had an emergency. When Ben presses, the truth comes out, that she fired Lena to prevent him from continuing his affair with her, and they quarrel, all the tea getting spilled. I wouldn't want to read the future in those tea leaves. Ellie, showing her propensity for eavesdropping and cluing us into who the voyeur was as if it weren't already apparent, moves in surreptitiously for a closer listen.
You know what? It doesn't matter then, because I had it. I'm taking my children and I'm getting out.
At the threat of Karen taking the girls, Ben vows to fight, and almost catches Ellie as he bursts from the room.
Oh, that's just great, Karen, great. Good night.
On his way to crash on the sofa, Ellie decides to put on some of the makeup and goes to have a late-night chat with Ben. I have to wonder if his immediate compliment of her somewhat gratuitous look was the right move.
Hey. You look great.
Thanks.
There are temptations and interpretations, after all, and anything from Ben that can be construed as a cue by Ellie only further complicates her already complicated feelings. After getting caught in a small lie about a detail pertaining to her...
Hadn't you noticed?
Yeah.
Ellie's insecurity drives her to confront Ben about whether he loves her or not, prompting him to tell her a story about Lawson calling BS on a parent not having a favorite, and how he didn't want to tell him Ellie was his favorite. This knowledge is a gift greater than any cosmetics. But the makeup kit will be invaluable in her ongoing hostilities with Mom. Ellie causes quite a hullabaloo when she struts downstairs before school. Karen is having none of it.
What is that you have on?
Dad's makeup.
And things get physical as Ellie epitomizes mean girl impudence,
Oh, you're gonna go upstairs and take it off right now.
You're just jealous.
prompting Karen to make an offhand remark she'll come to regret.
I'm going upstairs and I'm putting it right back on. My dead body!
This This culminates in Ellie once again giving thought to packing her suitcase. But she decides to concede for the moment, seeing an opportunity, and instead swiftly leaves with Inger for the bus stop.
Bye, Mrs. Potter.
She's a moody one.
Soon after, Karen is home alone when the phone rings. The caller doesn't leave a message on the answering machine. For any youngsters out there, in caveman times before voicemails, we had to record messages onto tiny tapes with a device plugged into our landline phones. The lack of a message lets her know Lawson is calling from next door, but since she doesn't desire to deal with him, she starts packing. Seemingly alone in the house, she is drawn by a strange noise.
Hello?
She goes downstairs to investigate. A detail Karen fails to notice. A shot reveals one of a pair of Greek drama decorative masks, comedy, lats the yin to its yang, tragedy. To her relief, finding a golf ball has broken through the back door window. Karen squats to pick it up. Of course, she is bludgeoned brutally by the bleakly frowning face of tragedy. A horrifically malicious act very well typifying the entirety of the course her life had taken. Later, aggressive, chaos-filled Ellie seems pleased, even serene, as she saunters up on the hubbub in the neighborhood. Even though she acts ignorant of the facts.
What's going on?
And responds appropriately to the news. That she is the killer should prove no surprise. Lawson looks too guilty by proximity and circumstances to be anything other than a red herring, and Ben clearly doesn't have the testicular fortitude. Detective Boland arrives on the scene, and it seems he's something of a hotshot detective.
A white woman got knocked dead in her own home. Inside a gated community. Don't you think they'd call me?
What seems like a cut-and-dry burglary gone wrong, he's immediately skeptical of the setup. And when he sinks his teeth into something, he won't let go.
Anything taken?
A diamond wedding ring.
Really?
He questions Ben.
Anything unusual or strange going on between you two? Arguments or fistfights? No.
Who lies and claims their marriage was solid. He also notices the missing mask.
I only saw a comedy.
Well, I have no idea where the other one is.
Through the vent, Ellie eavesdrops on the exchange.
And the old one, I'll be in touch.
Boland questions Lawson, who's too squirrely and suspicious for his own good.
Listen, you can screw around and still not have killed her.
Not quick to assign blame, Boland keeps his cards close to his chest.
You really think it's him? Him? Or somebody else?
The family grieves at Karen's graveside,
Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen.
either recalling her mom professing she was her favorite or having a little girl fantasy.
You're my #1 girl.
I tend to think the former. Inger, caught in something of an emotional fugue, nearly faints. Ben and Lena reconnect.
Oh, baby.
A touch of friction between them.
You need some time, Lena.
Boland keeps an eye out for suspicious behavior. The dynamics in the house have shifted dramatically. The trio decides to share a bed for the time being. Soon after, no silver linings for Inger.
You still have to vacuum the living room, you know.
But I just did the upstairs, and it's not even dirty.
Ellie becomes a stern taskmaster.
Do it!
Jeez, who died and made you boss? Okay.
And gets downright violent with Inger when she dares to run off with the comedy mask.
I'll kill you!
Her control issues seem to have multiplied since she became the de facto woman of the house, and soon she's totally committed to playing up the new position.
Ellie.
In bed, an odd happenstance occurs.
Dad?
In the morning, Ellie makes sure Ben has his lunch, and his growing discomfort shows when he's a bit puritanical about Ellie's nightwear.
Will you please go back inside? Come on, right now. Ellie, come on. Jesus.
Later, he will pass a polygraph, but Bolin takes the results with a grain of salt.
He's telling the truth.
According to Polly here.
Ben comes home to an infuriated, clingy Ellie.
Where were you?
She rakes him over the coals for his lateness.
I was worried sick.
What's up? Out and about.
And calls him out for his behavior as if she's the adult.
I smell liquor on your breath. Have you been drinking?
Yeah, what of it?
Later, she discovers he's not in bed and finds him on the couch, where she instigates serious talk.
You know, you were really mean to me tonight.
Well, you were really mean to me, too. Do we have to argue like this?
Revealing how she bewilders him.
I just don't know what goes on inside your head sometimes. I don't know what to think sometimes.
And it leads to Ellie broaching an old memory.
Remember when I was little and you used to kiss me like I was a movie star?
That was a while ago.
This play acting seems like something that could have been innocent, but took on enormous proportions in Ellie's young mind.
I would lean back and you would kiss me like Rudolph Valentino.
In this whole exchange, some boundaries are set as other boundaries are inexorably crossed.
It's very awkward.
And that's where this film launches into the stratosphere of weird. Those who are faint-hearted, brace yourself. Human fallibility, fatuousness, and frailty are on open display in the worst way, as something of a kiss of death.
Kiss me.
Precedes some funny business of the not ha-ha variety. If represented as physical matter, the size of this faux pas would not only fill in the Grand Canyon, but make it a 277-mile speed bump. It's a real
Do you realize what you've done?
situation. The film sort of paints Ben as falling into the tradition of the biblical figure Lot, as a man in some way taken advantage of by his daughter. Not so fast, though, but I'll get to that soon enough.
Oh, Lord.
In the morning, Inger discovers her father and sister, and seems to sense an even greater shift has occurred.
I'll make the coffee.
Sure.
Ben rushes out as if leaving the scene of a crime.
Hey, wait up! You'll be home tonight, right?
Of course. Tell Ellie I'm bringing somebody home for dinner.
The girls discuss the potential guest.
Well, it's probably somebody very important, like a coworker or something.
Ellie's certain she will gain brownie points for her cooking.
You know, Dad might be up for a promotion. And if he doesn't get the promotion, it won't be because of this meal.
And revealing she still has work to do no matter how grown up she fancies herself, promptly burns dinner. If only her cooking game were as killer as her. In all likelihood, feeling in desperate need of a buffer in the form of a strong-willed woman to combat a strong-willed woman, Ben makes the mistake of coming home with Lena. Ellie isn't one bit pleased about this development, and feels deceived. Lena dares to mother her, and that only enrages Ellie more. They're in sort of a championship scramble, with the bedazzled belt they seek being Ben's affections. After a tense dinner, Ben drives his once paramour home, and Ellie waits anxiously for his return. A black and white film plays on the TV I sought to identify, only to realize that the woman in the scene looks suspiciously like Lena. And the only part that's seemingly actually old-timey is the car running into a ditch, which was probably stock footage, so maybe we're seeing a fantasy of wish fulfillment through Ellie's eyes. Thinking herself very adult, she does what an adult might do to calm their nerves. Monkey see, monkey do. It seems no coincidence that Karen indulged, and once Ellie believes herself ensconced in an adult position, feels it behooves her to take up the habit too. This is an accurate depiction of the time period. Underage smoking was way too prevalent. Ben calls.
Dad?
Ellie? Are you still up?
Where are you?
Claiming car trouble and that he will have to stay at Lena's, almost as if he's afraid to come home. But Ellie has a solid BS detector.
The Audi was driving fine this morning.
I know. Funny, isn't it?
And has no trouble calling him out.
Yeah, real fucking right.
All Ellie's presumptions of her newly attained place are toppled when Lena's on the line and again dares to parent.
Please, Ellie, don't use language like that.
Lena?
In a fit of pique. With the call concluded and a storm raging around her, Ellie slinks beneath Lawson's house and retrieves her conspicuously hidden suitcase. Cut to a family dinner that, due to Lena's inclusion, Ellie perceives as a surrealistic nightmare. She fantasizes about stabbing the interloper. Only for the illusion to break and the reality to come into focus. With everything seemingly having blown up in her face, Ellie's a little defeated.
You didn't ask me if it was okay.
And at this point it's clear she is entirely too wrapped up in her home life and could maybe use some friends. Interestingly, after going through her dark awakening, even in a state of abjectness, she draws positive peer attention she seems to enjoy.
Looking good today, Sasquatch.
After this little ego boost, Ellie finds Bolin checking up on her there at school.
School the day before died. Attendance records.
The circle closing in. More circles than that are closing in too, though, even more pressing ones. Proving what an absolute coward Ben is, he and Lena tell the girls they're not rushing into marrying, and hard cut to,
Till death do you part.
Ellie is devastated.
I do.
Gets schnockered and drunkenly crawls out of the reception, avoiding Boland, who fully suspects her now, and winds up passing out on the nearby golf course. Lawson finds her and takes her home, where he bathes her. Then she wants to know,
Can we run away?
We can leave right now.
I think he's biting off way more than he can chew, like guaranteed he's choking to death. They have different ideas.
We don't have a lot of money, right? So, we just live off the land.
Of what they should do.
I think we should settle down.
Where?
Well, how about up north, like Portland? I mean, we can get an old house, something that's really cheap and broken down.
The family and Bolin return to the house in search of Ellie, and Inger comes upon the bloody tragedy mask in Ellie's suitcase. To determine if Ellie has run away, Lena seeks the suitcase, and upon visual confirmation, leaves it alone, reassured Ellie hasn't absconded, while Inger's obvious shock goes unnoticed.
Her suitcase is here.
Bolin and Ben speak to Lawson, who denies Ellie is there.
You wouldn't mind if I come and look around, would you?
Yeah, I do mind.
Why's that?
Because whether you love or hate police, you should never trust them to enter your home without a warrant under any circumstances? Ben gets riled at one of Lawson's statements.
What? That's not what we're suggesting, you bastard.
Now, Ben, that is exactly what you're suggesting.
You son of a bitch!
Almost like a jealous lover. Lawson encourages them to leave, so Ellie is safe for the moment, but she decides.
Yeah, I should go home.
Home?
Yeah.
Ellie sashays into the house.
What happened?
and treats Ben with defiant disdain. Boland finally gets his shot to interrogate her, but for once Ben and Lena advocate for her.
We can handle it from here, Detective.
If you don't mind, I'd like to talk to your daughter a few minutes.
It's kind of late.
And don't allow him the time or venue for interrogation. Sound action. No one should ever let the police talk to their child without representation. Strident Lena,
Be gentle, but firm. Be loving, but tell her that this behavior won't be tolerated.
wants loser Ben to lay down the law.
You're right. Absolutely.
It's not my place. Not yet. It's yours.
Not realizing Ellie has info that can torpedo.
Everything.
A case of trying to stare down the wolf, Ben tries to act real tough.
I want you to go downstairs and say you're sorry and tell her that you hope we have a nice honeymoon.
But the wolf won't waver.
I'll tell her you have a mole on your left ass cheek.
She counters.
I will.
And recognizes prey when she sees it.
I'll tell her.
Please.
Everything!
Ben has no ammunition, zero power, and no choice but to be malleable putty in Ellie's hands. Seeing him for what he is, Ellie, having lost all respect for him, declares rather derisively,
You're so weak.
and he has only one rebuttal because she's 100% right.
What do you want from me?
Ben tells Lena it was a mistake and ends the relationship.
Ben, we've only been married for 12 hours.
And I've been thinking about it for 12 hours. It's just not going to work out.
Ending it on day one had to feel pretty gratifying, but why didn't Ellie go right to the nuclear option to preventively thwart the marriage? Did she think Ben would come to his senses and realize he had signed an invisible contract abdicating power to her? I lean toward that she was a little gobsmacked her wiles failed, and she had to regroup and consider what his betrayal meant to her. Because don't get it wrong, she was a scorned lover at that point. In the end, she wrote him off, and gave up on any subterfuge that there was equal standing in their relationship. She gave him a chance.
So Lena left? It's too bad. I didn't even get a chance to say goodbye to her.
Chewed up and spit out Ben doesn't put up any resistance when Ellie exerts her control.
I won't be going to school today.
Hold on.
Meanwhile, Inger knows the truth.
What have you done, Ellie? I'm going to school.
Ellie ignores her, a grave mistake. When Lawson calls, she's back to her flippant self.
We talked about it, that's all.
Ellie, listen, you've got to listen.
Putting him through the ringer, not so ready to leave now that she has Ben's scrote firmly in her vice-like grip. Reeking of desperation,
Screw my plan of traveling around. It was a dumb idea. Let's just head up to Portland and open that bed and breakfast. The more I think about it, the better I like the idea.
he will roll over to all her demands like an obedient mutt, and even makes a proclamation.
I love you.
Without another word, she hangs up, knowing she has him on the hook the way the Cenobites had Frank on the hook, and she can do with him as she pleases. Ellie retrieves her suitcase, tries on her mom's wedding band, and intriguingly weeps, shown as a multifaceted reflection in the prisms of the diamond. This interlude seems to prompt Ellie to begin packing, ready to go with her contingency plan and abandon her family and life after all, for reasons I will clarify shortly. But Ellie won't be going anywhere without it being in a meat wagon. Perhaps in an instance of fait accompli set in motion when she bludgeoned Karen to death with the tragedy mask, Ellie doesn't realize an unseen force is intent on declaring,
It's curtains for you.
It begins when breaking glass draws her downstairs. Odd ticks, she carries the bloody tragedy mask and still wears Karen's diamond ring. Suspecting Lawson, she warns.
We have an alarm system, you know. You've probably set it off.
She traipses into the scattered glass, only to take a step back, right onto a shard. And down she goes, suffering significant damage. This final mistake is her undoing, as she's put in a state of vulnerability, right when, paralleling Karen's murder, an assailant swoops in and brutalizes her with the comedy mask. Alerted by the security company to a break-in at the Christensen's house, Bolin finds a distraught Lawson clinging to Ellie's corpse, and in a great example of useless authority, shoots him dead on the spot. Thus, the wrong guy takes the rap for everything. Did this suddenly become Intruder? The camera retreats and we see both theater masks are conspicuously absent. With Ellie out of the way, the reunited family departs for Lena's apartment. Ben consoles a distraught Inger. As Lena discovers among Inger's possessions the ensanguined comedy mask. She is of course shocked and terrified, and it's strongly implied that, oh no, the evil has wormed its way into the younger sister. So, what's this chilling look into the 90s teenage milieu getting at in its take-no-prisoner sort of way? From what's supposedly a positive review, in Variety, Glenn Lovell observed that, in his opinion, the film had a formulaic script, which tips us to the identity of the killer too soon. I never saw this as a murder mystery. The film is called Wicked, surrounds Ellie, and her mother gets taken out. Am I supposed to think it could be someone else? Thus, I believe the film had other ideas it was pulling out of its sleeve rather than trying to be a typical mystery thriller, while employing some of the trappings to give the film a glossier veneer. I can really only make guesswork of the intended politics of this film, because they kinda seem all over the place, which is apt for the time period and the scattershot nature of the teenage mind, especially in the topsy-turvy late 90s, when even without the internet coming into fashion, teenagers were being inundated with more contradictory viewpoints than ever before. It should be noted, due to various issues, this film's distribution was delayed all the way to August of 2001. A perfect encapsulation of when it was made. It's sad that it kinda missed the boat, because it's a nifty little thriller ripe with social commentary concerning the immaturity of contemporary society, the era's youth culture, and the unwholesome familial underpinnings. This film also exemplifies in glaring terms an issue that has become omnipresent in society, namely, the commodification of young women, forcing them to grow up too quickly, which only seems to worsen as time goes on and the line blurs at a younger and younger age, although exploitation of young women and girls has gone on since time immemorial. A decade after the making of this film, the book The Lolita Effect, The Media Sexualization of Young Girls and What We Can Do About It, by Meenakshi Gigi Durham, explored this phenomenon. Ellie rushes headlong into her vision of adulthood, the makeup and clothes and actions, spurred on by a society that has taught her in a shallow surface way what it takes to be a grown-up woman. In this way, she reminds me of a mukbanger, only instead of devouring a massive amount of food for an audience, she ingests what she views as pop culture norms, modifies herself to spec, and puts herself on display as a sexual object when she is clearly still childish in many ways. As unmanageable, ungrateful, uncivil, disrespectful, and short-tempered as Ellie, and even as the snotty teenager, obstinate daughter, and murderous femme fatale gaming her elders, wreaking havoc, and being a pain in everyone's derriere, she was the film's true victim. To be sure, she's a bratty young woman, and matricidal, and if triggered, who knows how many she may have killed in the future. No doubt she was deserving of punishment, not the fun kind, but all her negative, nasty traits were cultivated, and were as much to blame for her downfall as they were her egregious actions. So in the end, she was the victim of her own broken way of thinking in insidious ways. She was also the victim of the corrosive effects of a dysfunctional family and a defective society that provided a schematic she followed way too soon. The problem being, no matter her presumed level of maturity, she's not ready. It's problematic that she conflates adult actions, smoking, sex, with adulthood without understanding the requisite maturity required to handle those things wisely. Her brattiness, brashiness, and abrasiveness, her whole attitude really, are insight into her residual immaturity. In lieu of getting what she needs healthily, she resorts to outbursts in a futile attempt to fill her needs, and it only isolates her more. And the very action of tantruming and indulging in fantasy ideas of the world, she demonstrates how much of a child she really is. And any adult who sees it dismisses her out of hand, chalking it up to a moody phase. Karen has no idea how to parent a volatile teenage girl, and there's a certain air sans quality to Ellie and Ben's relationship that makes him no help. Both parents refuse to parent Ellie in an effective way, one seeing Ellie's cries for help as little more than annoying tantrums, the other seeing only the illusion Ellie presents when putting her best foot forward. Ellie could use more diplomacy. It's clear she has the capacity. She's a smart cookie, a nutty cookie to be sure, but she chooses to stir the pot because it achieves her ends. It allows her to intrude on discussions her parents should have behind closed doors, and away from a vent. Making Ellie part of the discussion creates a terrible power imbalance that was bound to breed big resentment. And it's not hard to imagine she was a wedge slowly splitting apart her parents for a long time. Whatever it takes to get her way, she makes herself a catalyst because what she desires is all important. This is because she's still in flux and going through a rough patch of development. When everything seems extra tough, she's overly aware of and sensitive to her dissatisfaction with everything other than the few select things she prizes. It has a lot to do with the self-centeredness of youth, how everything is harder and worse for her and everyone else is the problem. When Ellie told Inger she stayed for Ben,
Inger, he would freak out. He would no longer have a reason to live.
Her inflated sense of self-importance beautifully exemplified this teenage self-involvement. How the astronomical feelings of youth and puberty make someone at that age feel they are the center of the universe. In many cases an innate coping mechanism that wears off for most with age, but tempers fragile, underdeveloped egos in the meantime, or evolves into full-blown narcissism. Without outlets, without a proper figure to look to for guidance, she's completely unaware of any appropriate means of dealing with her tsunami of emotions. Many young people understandably want autonomy and free agency. Many abhor being policed and micromanaged. But they do need discipline and direction and structure, so a balance has to be struck. There are many parenting styles, and I feel Ellie suffers from the proper one for her needs not being applied. She had mental problems that make me think in her case a form of helicopter parenting, the more positive end of the spectrum, not the overly competitive drive the kid into the dirt to fertilize a forest of brag-worthy achievements end, might have helped, because her behavior evidences a deep need for constant emotional support and positive reinforcement. Her voyeurism shows a need to be constantly involved, to be in the know, to have a seat at the adult table as it were, and this was probably fostered from feelings of neglect, from feeling pushed aside while the adults are adulting. Since Ellie desperately wants to be a grown-up, that won't stand. The gifted makeup lists perfect ammunition to poke the mama bear. Ellie is all about power battles. I would say power plays, but she's more extreme, treating it all like war. They say all is fair in love and war, so on two fronts she can feel justified.
Yeah.
Are Karen's motives for controlling Ellie about suppression specifically, or more about maintaining decorum and propriety? Ellie seems more an obligation to her than a labor of love, so petty torment could play a hand, a little tit for tat, but I don't think the outside world is what concerns her. Ellie's explosive behavior is so well established, I would guess from as far back as when she was a small child, that Karen has no trouble airing their dirty laundry for the whole neighborhood. I think Karen sees it for what it is, and wants to nip it in the bud, prompting her violent response. It infuriates her that her oldest puts her in a position of defending a relationship she has already given up on, but what other choice does she have if she's to maintain her dignity? Broaching jealousy is a low blow, showing Ellie has zero respect. Because Ben is too frugal with how he doles out his time at home, likely for much of her life, Ellie views her mother not so much as a mother figure as a competitor for her father's attention and affection, and seems to have dehumanized her similarly to how governments dehumanize their enemies, only she was propagandized by her own delusions. As the provider, Ben is the one juggling the most, and it's apparent concessions were made to fund their lifestyle. I agree with Ellie's assessment that Ben is weak, but it goes so much farther back than where we meet this fractured family. The role of provider offered a cover, allowing him an excuse to be away, to maintain an impersonal distance that creates a buffer because his time seems valuable, which allows him to relate to Ellie in a way Karen is unable, because he isn't always stuck in her emotional maelstrom, the victim of her tirades and barbs. And more importantly, Ellie can relate to him as the ideal parent who isn't always on her case. I won't go into the validity or criticism of the Electra complex, Carl Jung's theory of a girl's psychosexual competition with her mother for possession of her father, but it seems the framework in which Ellie operates well beyond when most would outgrow it, if it were in fact a real thing and not so much psychobabble. When her parents' marriage is broken, the prospect of Karen taking her away from him is the entire motive needed to bloodily excise her mom from their lives like a tumorous growth, impeding her from the life she wants. This brings me to the 5-ton elephant in the room, Ellie's inappropriate relationship with Ben. The thing of it is, as uncomfortable as this subject matter is, it needs to be addressed, because these things go on. This is more a fantasy version of it, in which the daughter is the seducer, the taker, something of a succubus, and not vice versa. Not only did her father not purposely groom her, it was more inadvertent. He neglected her, which made her mistake him for a possession to seek and hold, which she does, using his vulnerability against him to establish the ultimate linchpin in their relationship. I can't tell if she's truly in love with Ben so much, or projects her fantasy onto him, and sees him as a means to an end. Her desire to offer him consolation raises other suspicions. There might have been some covert incest, a parent using their child to meet their emotional needs, going on between Ellie and Ben long before the physical stuff went down. Not quite as bad as physical incest, and nevertheless causes about the same level of psychological trauma, and even if not grooming per se, could have served as some form of primer for Ellie to, in a broader sense, assume her father's needs. No matter how much of a quote-unquote seductress an underage girl is, if anything transpires, it's on the adult, criminally and in all other ways. Like I already pointed out, I do not believe Ben intended to plant seeds that would bloom for Ellie into an entire forest. Stuff just got twisted up. There's appropriate and inappropriate affection, and sometimes the line between can be narrow. Many little girls have a crush on their dad, which dissipates as they grow up, or maybe evolves into the parameters they utilize to choose a mate. Most little girls can play act romantic scenarios with their father and not be warped. Ellie not so much. Viewing her father in terms of being a sexual conquest is not only unhealthy to the extreme, it shows she has internalized many wrong-headed lessons, and her development was at some point stunted because the little girl crush only intensified. I suspect when Inger came along, Ben prospered their relationship while Karen devoted to the baby, deepening one bond at the cost of the other. This movie seems to be saying something about the unmistakable sexual power of women through Ellie's transformation into Siren, and the seduction of Ben. I recently read an assertion that women stop mentally maturing the instant they realize they can use their wiles to get what they want. I don't believe this is across the board true, but I would speculate it's true in some cases, such as Ellie's, because though she feels and thinks herself grown up, for all her maturity and intelligence, she is in many ways still a child despite having the physical shape and ability of an adult woman. Ellie's desire to grow up metastasizes into full-blown obsession after Karen is gone, and she seeks to sexualize herself, maximizing on her sexual desirability to latch onto Ben, and is left floundering when intimacy does the opposite and drives Ben away. On one level, he knows the depth of the wrong he has committed, and maybe through denial thinks he can ignore what happened and quickly move on with Lena, not prepared for the fact troubled Ellie will not be once again relegated to underling below another woman, and will go nuclear if he wants to test her. In the tradition of Lolita, in this way the film shows the uneven dynamic forged when an adult man foolishly sleeps with an underage girl with an attitude and awareness of the power she holds. What's going on when Ellie tries on Karen's wedding band and breaks into tears? I believe she's not so much purely mourning her mom so much as her actions, what she cost herself, realizing after Ben had fallen from the pedestal on which she placed him, the killing and seducing weren't worthwhile after all. In the end, getting rid of Karen was little more than a Pyrrhic victory. As much as she thought she wanted a different life, in the end, she regretted it, some part of her yearning for hearth and home and even mother, and maybe even regretted all she had done to undermine her parents' marriage. I believe leaving with Lawson an attempt to leave behind the mess she created because it's a reminder of her colossal mistakes. Since they're both suspects in Karen's murder and Ellie's underage, I doubt once an APB was put out they would have made it far. Distinguishing Ellie in possibly a bad way because it suggests a lack of proper socialization that led to many of her problems. When many in her age group are more loyal to their friends than anything, she doesn't seem to prosper such links. Marking her as an outsider, she should have a friend group or a clique to run with, should have a BFF or at least a frenemy. For that matter, she should like older high school boys, even college guys. What this may reveal is there's something in her psychology that makes her a lone wolf, and hers is a private hunt for a scent she caught long ago. In regard to her lack of peer bonding, it's possible she was always that girl, as in that girl who doesn't fit in, the square peg in a world of round holes. Maybe a status earned early in her school career, perhaps even by choice. If peer acceptance were never important to her, it had to be because her desires don't require all that, because we know she will go to extremes to get what she wants. Tellingly, when she presents herself more fashionably, she seems to relish the positive attention she draws, suggesting if certain conditions hadn't been instigated young, she may have developed normally and not been disengaged from the aspect of her life that should be most important to her at that age. In some ways, Wicked really had its finger on the pulse of what was going on with underage women, and exploring some of why they were acting out, smoking, drinking, and engaging in sex. But in using that label of wicked, which in this instance I believe is synonymous with bad seed, malefic, or evil, it misses the mark of what made Ellie turn. She's presented as an accurate representation of many troubled young women to a point. The frustration, the angst, the feelings of adulthood not coming fast enough. It's in resorting to murder that she's the exception, but beyond that, she's insight into why young women were acting out. Acting out was kind of Ellie's jam, if only it got her somewhere. Is Ellie twisted, i.e. wicked, in a way that makes her truly evil? After all, she's an observant girl, a practiced voyeur, a knower of secrets, and for a child who's gotten too big for her britches without much thought toward consequence, she covers her bases fairly well. Plus, I think if not inclined to talk, she could win a tight lip contest with an oyster, not something so easy for those capable of a guilty conscience. Whatever her derangement, she'll go so far as to sleep with not only a paternal figure, but her flesh and blood father. But is she actually a nefarious psycho in general, or did she experience a psychotic break? I believe it possible she's a high-functioning sociopath, but I think conditions and precipitators manifested in her murderous actions. Ellie was already fed up, infuriated at Karen, only to learn she was not only cheating with Lawson, but intended to take her away from Ben. Later, she overhears that Ben is also having an affair with Lena, and likely blames Karen for Ben's straying, believing what he truly desires is a good, faithful woman happy to cater to his needs. Ben then explains his favoritism in a moment of shared vulnerability, confirming to Ellie their deep bond. When Karen dared to wipe off Ellie's makeup and shame her for proudly displaying her dad's gift, it all coalesced into a construct of murder. In final analysis, Wicked is about a mentally disturbed young woman in Ellie who was warped throughout an emotionally shallow childhood by a dysfunctional family bereft of healthy love, and a society that demanded she race off a cliff of premature adulthood, and the spillover of the splat she made onto everyone in her life, including the mother she eliminated like someone would get rid of an unsightly bush removed from their yard, the weak-willed father she manipulated with ease, and the impressionable little sister who maybe saw the writing on the wall and struck first. Or maybe she just didn't want Ellie taking away another mother figure. Ellie was a victim, but also a victimizer, a state of being born of a perceived necessity to conquer and obtain. Sabotaged by non-parenting, many wrong lessons during her upbringing, and the teenage propensity for hyperinflated emotions.
I don't care.
Important notions of decorum, propriety, and appropriateness were hurdles she vaulted way too easily, because a strong moral compass was never instilled, and she operated as if she never outgrew the intense selfishness of childhood. Ambition outstripped by a lack of true maturity, she thought she was the one in the right, believed she could seize her family in a hostile takeover, and for all her misguidance was ousted as violently as she ousted Karen. In the end, the whole escapade is a tragedy of almost Shakespearean proportions, but I doubt it will stand the test of time so gracefully. This film might also have something to say about how even though there are classes determined by monetary standing, there are ubiquities to the human experience that transcend status. How even upper middle class people can do the trashiest, most confounding and deceptive things. It doesn't matter that the Christensens enjoy an upper middle class lifestyle, in a safe gated community, and have a beautiful home. They are as subject as anyone to dysfunction, mental illness, conflict, low-value actions, poor child rearing, and even brutal murder. Is Wicked worth a watch? I'll leave that up to you and your personal tolerance for this kind of film. I personally find it a curiosity, but it's one of those I don't know if I exactly like, or if it just appeals on a gut level for not being afraid to tread some awkward and weird but pertinent and relevant territory.
That went slightly better than the worst it could have possibly gone, so hooray!
Gee whiz, what a doozy, and about as comfortable to cover as sitting on a cactus. I guess I wanted to talk about something from my day. You know, because I'm from the generation where
I do what I want.
Luckily, I've reached the end of the rope, so I won't leave you dangling. If you made it this far, thank you for hearing out my ramblings. Please share any refutations, opinions, accusations, japes, or other ideas in the comments below. And please join me next time when I talk about one that's a little more fun. With prom season upon us, I thought it might behoove me to thrash out one that had its slash out. Slasher, that is. The film that showed us Jamie Lee Curtis was a hell of a disco dancer way back in the day, which to me makes her that much more deserving of that Oscar. The long ballyhooed prom night from 1980. And remember, evil never looked so good. Bye now.